Hey everyone, welcome to Decision Desk HQ's Let Me Finish. I'm Liberty Vittard, professor of the practice of data science at Washington University in St. Louis, and I'm joined with our esteemed panel. I have Kirk Beto, editor of Hotline, and Michael Pruser, data analyst at Decision Desk HQ. Make sure to join us tonight for our post-debate show, where you will have some great voices here analyzing what the debate really meant between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Also, make sure to join us on November 5th for election night, where we will be discussing an entire host of panel to discuss everything that is happening, analysis and prediction, and until we get the final answer of who our next president will be. I will start off with some of the polls that we're seeing right now. So first, we have the New York Times Siena poll that is showing Harris polling nationally at 47, at Trump at 48. So Trump ahead by 1. So Trump is pulling ahead of Harris. Maybe her brat summer is over, but it's still pretty much neck and neck. Then we have CBS News polls. First, we have Wisconsin that shows Harris at 51 and Trump at 49. So she is ahead by 2. Wisconsin, Biden won by a really small amount, less than a percentage point back in 2020. So it's definitely a state that Trump was planning to take back, but it is leaning towards Harris. Then we come up on Michigan. We have Harris at 50 and Trump at 49. So Harris ahead by 1. And finally, we have probably the most important state this cycle of Pennsylvania at a dead heat of 50-50 Trump and Harris. Remember, this was a big decision for Harris to pick Governor Tim Walz over Pennsylvania's governor, Josh Shapiro. It might have been a bad choice if this means she's not going to be able to win over this incredibly important state in terms of electoral votes come November 5th. So I guess that really brings us to this question. I mean, Kirk, what do you think's going on? Is her momentum gone? Was there really ever true momentum in the first place? I mean, for there to be so much momentum and excitement and for her to be in a dead heat, you'd think if it was so exciting, she'd be way further ahead.
Well, you got to remember where she was coming from here as a relative unknown, at least on the national stage, at least compared to Trump and Biden. She was a part of the administration, obviously. But one of the things that I think is interesting about that New York Times Siena College poll is just how many people want to know more about Kamala Harris. And she's going to get that opportunity at the debate stage tonight to really introduce herself to probably the biggest audience of voters that she's going to have before November 5th here. What I'm a little bit more concerned about if I'm the Harris team is kind of that national poll. Now, national polls, as we know, and if you're watching this show, you know that the popular vote is not what's going to win an election here. It's those polls in the battleground, Liberty, that you outlined here. But if Harris is trailing Trump in national polling, where she should be up conceivably maybe 2 or 3 points to reflect the amount of wasted votes, or at least excess votes that Democrats get in those states like California and New York with large urban populations, but kind of capped out at how many electoral college votes you get, that's concerning right now. Again, the New York Times poll is just one number right now. We need to see if this is a continuing trend. But I would give a little bit of pause if I was the Harris team and know that I have a lot of work to cut out for me in these next few weeks.
Yeah, Kirk, I hear you about the electoral college in terms of Democrats needing more votes. I don't think it's as prominent this year as it has been in the past. I think that Harris can probably squeak out a victory at +2, maybe even +1 if things fall the right way. And I think you're right. The New York Times poll really showed that the thing lacking in the Harris campaign is her visibility. Before the DNC went off, she was running around state to state and she was doing a great job of campaigning. And since the DNC, she's only had 3 or 4 events in the last 2.5 weeks. Nothing last weekend, nothing the weekend before it. And voters need to know who they're voting for. You know, the honeymoon is definitely over. And she has an opportunity in the debate tonight to really cement herself as the choice that's not Donald Trump, similar to what Joe Biden did in 2020. And I think she can do that if she stays on message. Now, on message is going to be new for her. She recently just launched her policies on her website, which was brand new. So that's a good sign. And it seems like the honeymoon is over because she's taking more time to actually explain who she is and what she's about, and not so much just the summer of joy, which we had experienced the first 4 or 5 weeks of the campaign.
Well, if you notice at the DN, sorry, Michael, for cutting you off.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you look at like how she comported herself in her DNC speech, it was very, very heavy on biography. It almost was like a giant infomercial, like a bio spot that you would see if you're introducing a new candidate. It's like kind of the first round of ads you would buy if you're a new candidate onto the scene at any level of the ballot. Now, this debate, Michael, to your point, is going to be her opportunity to kind of introduce what her priorities are in a Harris administration after she took the her nominating speech as kind of an introduction. Now we can start getting into specifics.
She's got to move faster. You know, this was a truncated time period. She had 15 weeks from start to finish, and she needs every day. And I'm not sure that she's using every day to her advantage right now. You know, and it's true of Trump as well. He's not out there campaigning every day. He's taking 4 or 5 days off. He's on the golf course most of the time now. So this is not a typical 2020 campaign for Trump or 2016 campaign for Trump. But Harris is the one with room to gain here. She's the one with undecided voters. She's the one who opinions really haven't formulated yet. So I think tonight's debate is really going to be about whether or not she shines, and not so much about Donald Trump, because we know what we're going to get from Donald Trump in a debate. We've seen it countless times now.
Do you really think she can win this debate? You know, I mean, just as we've been talking about for the past couple of minutes, all we've been talking about is Harris, the debate. Nobody in the media is talking about Trump in the debate. It's kind of like, we know what we're going to get. He's a seasoned debater. He's really pretty good at it. Kamala has shown that she's not so great at it. I mean, is this really, like, does she have the ability to win, or is there just going to be gas, or is everyone going to just focus on her gaffes, really?
Well, I don't think necessarily either candidate can win the debate, but I think either candidate can certainly lose the debate. Now, whether Harris has a very bad outing out there, if she had, like, she's had difficulty with off the cuff and unscripted moments before, that's going to be an issue. If Trump really just doubles and triples down on kind of his racist and sexist attacks against Harris, I think that's going to cost him as well. I don't think anyone is going to be able to come out a clean winner, but someone can definitely come out a very clear loser if they're not too careful.
Sure. You know, Donald Trump is going to give you some nicknames. He's going to use big hand gestures, and he's going to do what he does. But the point of this debate is for Harris to show the American people that she can lead the country. She's trying to be the candidate of change. You know, her campaign slogan is a new way forward. She has to explain that. She has to do a good job of spending her time wisely in showing the American people that she can lead. And I think that if she kind of takes her focus away from Donald Trump and speaks to the country rather than speaking at him, she can do very well and come out of this where she can reverse the recent trend where polling has kind of gone against her over the last couple of days.
I mean, but do debates really even matter? You know, I mean, obviously the Biden-Trump debate in June mattered, but in general, debates don't really seem to change polling that much. It always seems to be more the media attention afterwards that really changes it, rather than the people that are watching the debate tend to be more politically engaged and sort of already have made up their decision anyway. Do you guys think a lot of people are watching this that haven't made up their minds?
No, I would say no. One of the interesting things that you point out, you know, we launched a newsletter this morning on DDHQ. You should sign up for it if you haven't already. It's about the debate history over the last 60 years since Nixon and Kennedy took the stage back in 1960, and which debates on television have actually mattered. And there's only really been a couple of them. There was that one. There was the Trump-Biden one, obviously. And then there was one in 2012 that people thought mattered, which was the first Romney-Obama debate. Romney came out of the gates. He established himself as a moderate. He attacked Obama, who was a little timid at the time. And polling changed. And people thought, well, this isn't going to be a shoo-in for Barack Obama this year. As it turns out, it kind of was. Eventually, that faded. The next 2 debates, Obama came back strong, and he was perfectly fine. And the end result was a rather comfortable win for him. So you're right in that the debate probably really doesn't matter, but this is a unique circumstance. We've never had a candidate enter the race so late before. And so there could be variables here that we really don't know, that we haven't seen in the past, which could matter. So at the very least, you know, she's got an hour and a half. She has to come out strong, no gaffes, and walk away from this knowing she gave it her best, and that there's nothing that's going to be on the next loop of memes for the next couple of weeks that she made a mistake on. You know, that's where we are on social media today.
I mean, I kind of think we also, we've focused and understandably so much on the presidential race. What about, sort of Senate and House racing? Where is polling there? Where do you see this going, Kirk? I know you're thinking about this a lot.
No, I actually wrote about this a little last week and explored why we have a real lack of House race polling right now. I pulled a little data from the polling archive over at 538. At this point, in 4 years ago, in 2020, in that cycle, there are 151 or so publicly released polls of the House. And fast forward 4 years, there are about 90 this time around. The House and Senate are going to be very, very narrowly divided. You talk to strategists in both parties, and they said that the House will probably be decided by plus or minus about 5 races here right now. Either way will decide the majority. The Senate, it's increasingly looking like it's going to come down to the race in Montana. If Democrats can hold on there, which it's looking less and less likely, which each new poll we get out of Montana, that they'll be able to keep their majority. I think the question now is how big almost is that Senate majority going to be for Republicans? Is it going to have Ohio in there? Is it going to have any of the presidential battlegrounds? And I wanted to talk to pollsters and folks in the industry a lot about why there is this lack of House race polling and what's the effect of it. And there's just been a lot less incentive for independent pollsters to poll the House this time. There's not a very clean overlap between the presidential and Senate battlegrounds and the races that are going to decide the House, because the House control of the House is probably going to run through blue states like California or New York, where they're it's not very competitive at the presidential level. Yes, there are Senate races there, but not as competitive as the presidential battlegrounds in Arizona, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, the states we've been talking about a lot. And there's a lot more niche audience for that, despite the control of one whole chamber of Congress being on the line. It doesn't get as much attention, and it's not necessarily worth all the investment that pollsters have to do to get eyeballs on that, despite it being pretty consequential. I'm not going to say it's as consequential as the White House, but still very consequential. Think about what our politics has been defined as the last 2 years with the Republican-controlled House, and before that, what all Democrats were able to do there. And it's when I was talking to pollsters, and Michael and Liberty, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. They're talking about how it might be a little bit harder to get a representative sample and a little bit more expensive and cumbersome of a single congressional district than it would be to even do like a nationwide survey, because it's such a concentrated area that you're trying to get demographics of. And you guys are much better at data than I am. I would love to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so Kirk, it is more expensive, right? It's something that requires a lot of finesse, and pollsters at the state and national level, they don't really have much of that. Not to mention, from a media point of view, releasing a House poll in CA 47 is not nearly as impactful as a presidential poll or a Senate poll. The other issue with local polling is that there's just not enough money for it. All of the money this cycle has been flowing to the top, so much so that Harris has had to actually send some of it down scale. She just transferred 25 million, I think, out of her campaign because she has too much. Most of the donations that come in from Americans, they go straight to the top, and they don't realize that it's the state the state legislature and the congressional and Senate that's just as important in what goes on in their lives. So I think it's a combination of a lot of things, but as we're getting away from, as we're getting into a new age in 2024, everybody's just so focused on the presidency, and that's where 24/7, media attention is. It's just very challenging to find the sample, to find the money, and to find the time to get out and get the local polls.
I would trade the next 3 polls of Pennsylvania for just one poll of the open races in Michigan. I would trade 3 Pennsylvania polls for Michigan 7 and Michigan 8 polling right now.
I mean, I think you also have to think about how hard it is. I mean, think about the sort of the public trust in polls and where a lot of people and a lot of companies that would pay for polls are. 2016, it was off. It was actually off more in 2020, but in 2016, it flipped it the wrong direction. It was saying it was Clinton that was going to win when it was actually Trump, but it was actually off more in 2020, and it's leaned Democrat both times. It'll be really interesting to see what happens for 2024 and whether it leans Democrat again, and whether we're actually seeing that it's harder to find out what Republicans are thinking than Democrats. And I think on that very positive note about the polling, I think that ends our show for today. Make sure to watch our post-debate show tonight. We will be right on here. You'll have a really interesting group here to discuss with you what is happening and what happened with the debate, who won, who didn't win, or who lost for that matter. And then, of course, remember to watch the show Tuesdays and Fridays every week up until Election Day on November 5th, where we will be here all day, all night, however long it takes until the final decision is made on the races that are going to affect all of us in November 2024.